Thank you very much, Chairperson. Delegates, South Africa's economic and social challenges risk stagnation amid an unprecedented energy crisis and increasingly binding infrastructure and logistic bottlenecks. The main threats to business activity in the country include power cuts, tightening financial condition, and endemic public sector corruption, which can spill over into private sector activities. Real GDP growth is projected to decelerate sharply to 0.1% in 2023, mainly due to significant increase in the intensity of power cuts. As we are speaking now, I'm informed that we are on stage 6, as well as the weaker commodity prices, external environment as well. As ActionSA, we believe far-reaching reforms are needed to achieve an inclusive, greener, and job-rich growth in South Africa. ActionSA is the country's only solution to economic prosperity. Our party have spent 8 months engaging members and supporters of ActionSA. We have engaged experts, professionals, and ordinary South Africans about the solutions needed to address this greatest challenge facing South Africa. It is at this moment where I want to thank all the colleagues that have contributed to this policy, from our members on the ground to the panelists that were with me in the IPP, and everyone that has read the policy and made proposals in terms of amendments. ActionSA aims to create an environment that achieves a careful balance between allowing the private sector to grow, the private sector to innovate, and compete effectively in the global economy, while working towards the goal of creating a more just and equitable South African economy. Entrepreneurs are equally, if not more, important when the economy is not doing well. When unemployment is high, like it is now, and the economy is contracting and stagnating, we look at dynamic entrepreneurship to help us to turn around the economy. The reality is that we do not have the sufficient financial resources as South Africa to address all the gaps in our economic infrastructure. Colleagues, it has been estimated that South Africa will have an infrastructure backlog gap of 4.8 trillion by 2030 unless increases are made in the investment of infrastructure. This is particularly important to the socio-economic advancement of the nation. Insufficient and poor economic infrastructure management in the past 2 decades has limited our citizens' access to markets, livelihood opportunities, and services such as the clean water, education, health, transport, and communication. In these policy drafts that are in front of you, ActionSA intends to reduce the bureaucratic red tape, procurement inefficiencies, and corruption that enhances the value derived from public investment. Improving the investment environment that provides better returns for investors will attract local and international investors into public infrastructure projects. Catalytic projects investment will bring opportunities to improve South Africa's economic competitiveness and have positive socio-economic returns. Delegates, the country is dealing, as I said, with rolling blackouts after years of mismanagement of the state-owned utility. It was therefore important that the policy of energy had to come before the economic prosperity policy. The ease of registration process and licensing requirements of energy production that encourages private sector investment is something that is long overdue. South Africa's economy cannot operate at full efficiency without the stable supply of electricity. As ActionSA, we believe that stabilizing the electricity grid through proper infrastructure upgrading, maintenance, expansion is the first step towards achieving this energy security that we are talking about. Elevated levels of load shedding in 2023 could cost the South African economy 1.6 trillion in lost economic activity, which will be 400 billion more than what it cost us last year. The impact on gross value added to the economy will be 725 billion, causing huge impacts on employment in South Africa. Job losses due to elevated load shedding could amount to 860,000 jobs in 2023. South Africa currently has the highest unemployment rate in the world at nearly 33%, with 75.1% of youth in the country out of the labor force. In 2021, the World Bank Economic Analysis for South Africa found that young entrepreneurs were one of the country's best hopes of solving the jobs crisis, which has been worsened, obviously, by the COVID-19 global pandemic in an environment of weakened economic growth. South Africa will have to address the three chronic labor market challenges to generate employment. Number one, the low levels of self-employment. Number two, the high rates of unemployment. And the last one being an extremely high rate of inactivity, particularly in the youth. ActionSA will establish a labor law framework that increases access to gainful employment and inclusion. We plan to improve the productivity of South Africa's labor force by decreasing the cost and effort of employing young people and ensure equitable access to opportunities between workers and owners of capital. Although we believe that labor unions are a valued stakeholder, as ActionSA, we will, however, not allow unions to have a veto right over the economic policy. The Labour Relations Act will be amended to reduce the political power of trade unions. ActionSA will promote funding of entrepreneurial ventures by introducing low-interest, government-secured loans for SMMEs at private financial institutions. We will introduce targeted investment types that have reduced capital gains tax to enhance investment into SMMEs. Our goal is to achieve a market-driven government support mechanisms that unlock potential of labor-intensive sectors. We want to accelerate growth of sectors where South Africa has a competitive advantage. The agricultural sector has the potential to create labor-intensive growth in rural areas. It is vital to ensuring food security in the face of climate change and produces byproducts that can be utilized in the green economy. As ActionSA, we are advocating for increased participation of black farmers, increased employment in rural areas in the agricultural sector, and sustained food security in the face of this climate change. Delegates, South Africa's delay in economic rebound is actually attributed to many factors, as you know, among others, government inefficient economic policies that have been unable to reform our global competitiveness. South Africa's overall and factor competitiveness ranking among the 63 countries surveyed in 2022 ranked 60th, an improvement of 2 positions from 62nd position in 2021. The dismal ranking is attributed to rising public debt levels amid the shrinking fiscal space, ongoing electricity supply, and rolling blackouts as well as the lack of decisive plans to revive the struggling economy. Addressing structural barriers to South African economic competitiveness and decreasing the cost of doing business in South Africa will catalyze access to economic prosperity. Competing and winning in the global economy requires that South African firms produce better products at a better price than the international competitors, which can be achieved by supporting, among other things, innovation, including improving productivity and focusing on competitiveness advantage that ActionSA believes in. We are ready to create an enabling environment for economic competitiveness by reducing these barriers to innovation and growth, and improving, obviously, collaboration between the public sector, labor organization, industry bodies, and individual firms. Delegates, we advocate for increased investment. We advocate as well for innovative thinking that will allow South Africa's SMMEs to improve its economic contribution. A strong and sustained economic growth emanating from trade and investment is needed to confront the challenges of unemployment. The mining sector is not performing as well as it used to be. Local factors such as union militancy, rising production costs, and unreliable transport and energy infrastructure remain the downside risk impacting South Africa's extractive sector. The growth of our economy is contingent upon the unhindered flow of goods and services across our borders and significant inflows of foreign direct investment. Ladies and gentlemen, our status as an investment destination relies on our performance in all other areas of economic prosperity. Investment is required to improve our performance in areas of infrastructure, of sectoral development, of competitiveness, and also on employment creation. International trade requires that we be competitive on the international stage. It is driven by the efficiency of our trade infrastructure and productivity of our labor force. ActionSA, we vow to reform the legislation, regulations, and policies that constrain trade and FDI in its first year in government. Ladies and gentlemen, the informal economy plays a significant role in urban economies. It empowers individuals to generate income to sustain their household. It creates jobs and provides access to goods and services where people live. As ActionSA, we want to turn around the current approach from a system that is punitive and seek to formalize the economy to one that empowers individuals to start micro-enterprises. I want to leave you with the thoughts that rather than amending the Constitution and expropriating privately owned land and property without compensation, we as ActionSA believes that land reform can be accelerated by, among other things, expropriating abandoned and hijacked buildings and repurposing them to state-owned land property in economically strategic areas. Expropriating and conditionally releasing such properties to the private sector developers, affordable mixed housing buildings can be provided, student accommodation can be provided, and that will lead to economic prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, the policy that's in front of you rests on the effectiveness of implementation. If you are not able to implement these policies, South Africa will remain in the position that it is. For too long, as you know, South Africans has been rich with policy, but the poor implementation has been reported to be our downfall. We must therefore, without hesitation, capacitate our institutions that are responsible for the policy implementation. We must also ensure that we have competent people that are making these decisions so that we can be able to appoint the right persons. With that, we present to you the economic prosperity policy, and we ask delegates to debate and therefore also approve the policy. Thank you very much.